All right, welcome to episode 194 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast network. Tom Albano, Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow us on the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, 470 subscribers, youtube.com/ETB Network. We are growing. We need to hit that 500 number. Please help us. And we're going to be able to add some membership tiers and we get you more bonus content. Help us out. Also, etbpodcast.com for blogs, content, more information. Working on some stuff there as well. So make sure you follow along. By the way, second episode with the new intro. Got a lot of positive feedback on the intro. So I'm kind of glad now we have a steady intro going for this show. And don't get me wrong, I loved putting those intros together. And just quick little thing, that was back to our days when the Dan Le Batard show days. We used to love those little funny intros.
But it's nice to just have weekly same kind of intros like everybody else on this network.
No, it's fun, and a lot of our other shows are working towards that as well. All right, a lot of interesting topics on the docket today. Jonathan Taylor versus Jim Irsay, and Jim Irsay's an idiot. Yes, I know that's a little biased, but he's an idiot. Also, it's back. No, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's back. Just leave it at that.
It's back. Also, another incident in the world of college football. Yes, unfortunately, a couple weeks ago it was Northwestern. Now it's Minnesota.
And that's not considering also Northwestern has some other lawsuit going against it. Surprise, surprise. The stupid Ohio State quarterback, the gambling. College football, the season hasn't begun. We're still like 3 or 4 weeks away, and it's already going to hell.
Yeah, really. Also, MLB trade deadline reactions. Yes, we're going to have to react to a certain team not doing very much. We'll break down the rest of the deadline as well, including quotes from Max Scherzer talking to The Athletic. So we'll get to that as well. Also, more news on the Damian Lillard front with the Portland Trailblazers, and he might be getting in trouble with the NBA. Yes, Adam Silver might actually be doing his job.
Wait, we might actually have a tampering hold thing?
It's not necessarily tampering, but because he's he's not a free agent. What am I saying? He's under contract. So I didn't know you could tamper against yourself, but that's a whole different issue. And if we have time, maybe we'll get to some ESPN nonsense again, but that's if we have time. All right.
Let's get to the top story of this week, which actually we're going to do the Minnesota thing, but you know what? This war of words that has been going on between Colts running back Jonathan Taylor, owner Jim Irsay. Obviously, we've covered within the last month the whole running back, I guess we want to say, for lack of a better term, uprising, in which you have the guys who have the contracts and the guys who haven't gotten paid all coming together to basically say, hey, our market is basically crap and
the declining market.
Right. And ultimately, last week we have the Zoom call. Coincidentally, right after the Zoom call, Saquon Barkley elects to sign it's an $11 million 1-year deal with some incentives to kind of, I guess, please him.
But a $900,000 bonus, essentially.
Right. But now we've gone from the likes of Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler. Now at the front of the running back war is Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor, over the last couple of years, as the Colts have managed to be a very meddling, mid team at best, and then last season, just absolute disaster. I mean, if you want an emblem of the kind of season last season was for the Colts, just think back to that Colts-Vikings game where they were up like 29-0 at the half and ended up losing like 36-33 or something like that.
Oh, it was a bad season for the Colts. Actually, I'll break out a new sound effect, which would definitely would sum up the Colts season.
Emotional damage.
Yes, the Colts season last year was emotional damage. I mean, it was that bad.
Now, obviously, they've got some nice young pieces. Taylor, Alec Pierce at the wide receiver helmet. Now, obviously, the big story with the Colts this year is the drafting of their new young quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Yes, they actually elected not to go to the quarterback carousel. Now, granted, they did pick up Gardner Minshew and his legendary staff, but obviously the expectation is that Anthony Richardson is going to have most, if not all, of the games in his rookie season at the helm. But that means that basically you're going to have some, for all the youth that you have, it's going to take time and building. And with guys like Jonathan Taylor, your stars, you got to have them. That being said, here we are about to enter the last year of his contract, I believe, before he hits unrestricted free agency.
Right. Yep.
And
I don't know, but this situation is bizarre because Jim Irsay is a very outspoken owner, to say the least, sometimes more than Jerry Jones. At times, I don't know if that's too much of a stretch, but I think he actually does speak out. And sometimes his words mean more than Jerry Jones, because Jim Irsay, let's put it this way, he shouldn't be throwing stones at glass houses because of his own situation. Him and his DUIs and he's not the let's see, what's the best word I can use? Character. He's not the best of character.
no, and
yeah.
I saw a meme after Dan Snyder sold off the NFL, the Washington NFL franchise. Now, obviously, Jim Irsay was a very big voice in trying to get Dan Snyder out of there, to give him that credit. But I saw a meme, and it was like a passing of a torch kind of meme. One hand said Dan Snyder, the other hand said Jim Irsay, and the torch said worst owner in the NFL.
I mean, it's true. Both of them are bad owners. Unfortunately, and you and I have said this over the years, bad people have power. Bad people who have money have power. And when you look at the situation with Jonathan Taylor, who has basically requested a trade, because, again, like all the other running backs, they're underpaid. At least the bigger ones are underpaid. Saquon is underpaid. Taylor is underpaid for the amount of stuff that he does.
Well, now let me explain this about the Taylor situation. I can't take anything back that I said last week. Yeah, the running back market is depressed. The days of the cow are done. The days of the pocket passing quarterback exclusively are done. That being said, I feel like the Colts have more to lose without Jonathan Taylor than the Giants did without Saquon Barkley, than the Raiders do without Josh Jacobs, more than maybe the Chargers do without Austin Eckler, because Jonathan Taylor, by far, is the best player on that Colts team.
Agreed.
And it, like I said, this whole Colts team is so young and developing. It's going to take a couple of years for them. As trash as their division is, the Titans, they were still in the hunt last season before everything had an utter collapse, and it was their division for some time now. Now Trevor Lawrence in his second year last year with the Jags. The first, now that Urban Meyer was out of the picture, the Jags actually looked like they could fulfill their potential. Last year, they ended up coming back, defeating the Titans to win the division, coming back against the Chargers in that playoff game. So
that insane game, by the way.
So now it looks like that AFC South division is the Jaguars to lose.
Well,
so if you're the Colts, you need to continue to develop. And if you want a fighting shot, you really think you have a fighting shot, you need a guy like Jonathan Taylor. So
first of all, I don't think the Colts are a good team. Let's just be real. I mean, and like anyone who's would Jonathan Taylor make them a presentable team that could go for a playoff spot? Yes, they would be presentable. That's the word I would use. I wouldn't say that they're.
It's like when I always defended Barkley for years, is that football is part business and you need that star. Jonathan Taylor is that star that the fans will come out to see.
There's a whole nother part of this piece, which Jonathan Taylor, if you saw him tweeting and really mad at the media because they put reports out there that he was injured or came into camp injured, and he had to come out and say, hey, stop sending out a false narrative, and then they put him on PUP, I think.
Well, the reason they put him on the PUP list, and this is, again, a whole thing about Irsay and his intentions and maybe to some degree his evilness, is because he's on the PUP list, guess what?
Don't have to pay him.
Don't have to pay him. And then they can just tag him. Then they can just extend him into next season. with the tags, and then it's a Barkley situation all over again.
See, these owners are a bunch of assholes because they have all this money and they're using a depressed market against all these guys to say, hey, this is a depressed market. I don't have to pay you. Like, I don't have to pay you.
Do that, but here's the thing. Irsay says he will not extend or trade Taylor. And I understand the owner's viewpoint is like we were talking about last year. But here's the thing. There are reports out there that teams are calling for Taylor. If you're really going for, if you really have this young team and you know deep down that it's going to be a few years, why not trade him while his value is so high and you can get some high draft picks and other materials for him?
Because that's not Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay is I'm an evil, you know what? I will do what I want when I want. You're not going to tell me how to do it. Think about wait a minute.
But it's a stupid owner move.
Of course it's stupid. Look at Jerry Jones, the amount of times he used his power not to trade people or stop people from going somewhere else. It doesn't matter. It could be any owner. It could be the Maras, or it could be the Jets ownership, which is fucked up a bunch of stuff. It doesn't matter who it is. These owners who have the money, they have the power, they can do whatever the hell they want because it's their organization. And that's what's happening here with Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor requested a trade, and Irsay came and said, we will not trade Jonathan Taylor. We won't do anything. And the other quote, which I can't remember directly, was that
what they're going to do with the PUP list and tags and everything, and the tags to make it like a Barkley list, they're going to do everything in their power to basically. It reminds me of the whole writer strike going on with that one quote of, "We're going to bankrupt him and force him to come." Put him in a situation where he's got to come play for us to get.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, I'm sure you saw also that Taylor met with Irsay in his luxury bus,
and it did not go well.
But you know what? You know how ridiculous that sentence sounds. By the way, oh well, he met with me in my luxury bus. Okay, show off. Put your money where your mouth is, then, if you're going to do that. I mean, Jim Irsay, like I said, should not throw stones at glass houses because he's not exactly the angel in this organization. Okay?
Yeah, Jonathan should be paid. Well, it's like what I said before. If we're talking about an owner to be the face of evil, the torch may have been passed from Dan Snyder now to Jim Irsay.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's be clear, though, that Snyder will always be, I think, the pinnacle.
He's not active, though.
He's not right, but I'm just saying, like, Dan Snyder was the pinnacle of evil.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't say Jim Irsay. At least we don't think he's done half the shit that Snyder has done. But he's gotten into a DUI, which could be just as bad at times, and it makes me question his cognitive abilities as an owner, because you have a guy like this who can run, he can catch passes, which a lot of running backs can't do. He's got equal value on both sides of the offense, and you're not paying him.
And again, I understand the depressed market value of the running back. So if you want to do all this crap to him, fine. But are you going to sit here and tell me that Anthony Richardson throwing to the likes of Alec Pierce and company is what's going to get you over the top?
You know what that is? That's I have someone in waiting if you don't want to take the money I'm offering you. That's what that is.
Let's talk about the other part to this. Jim Irsay, in a way, kind of lost the negotiation piece because Zach Moss, who came from the Bills, was the running back 2 over the Bills, was going to be here. And very, you know what? Zach Moss is a pretty damn good running back. So if this whole thing with Taylor didn't go in, okay, Zach Moss is a fine piece to elevate to an RB1. And now he has a broken forearm and is going to be out for several weeks this season. So right now, you basically have no running back.
Yeah, so basically your leverage is gone at that point.
Guess what? Even if you don't want to pay Taylor, fine, but then you're not going to have any choice. You may have to throw a 1-year, $10, $15, $20 million deal to Dalvin Cook or Zeke. You may not have that choice.
Well, we could talk about Dalvin Cook because that's a whole nother situation. But
and that's what baffles me most, Nick, is Dalvin Cook. I know he's had his share of injuries, and maybe that's why, but 4 or 5 straight years of 1,000+ rushing yards. He doesn't have a contract.
I told you it has to do with the tag number, unfortunately, where when the tag number is 2 to 3 times less what a quarterback is making, they're going to put the money and the chips in the basket of the quarterback instead of the running back. That's why the Saquon Barkley thing took so long, because Saquon wants stability. I think for him, it's not necessarily the money, it's the stability to have a contract.
I could see that. And here's the whole thing. A running back is going down, which
Yeah.
means one of these teams by week 9 or so is not going to have any choice but to sign Dalvin Cook.
It's a good point. I mean, the one point I just want to make on the Irsay Taylor situation, it's kind of a by hook, by crook situation if you think about it, because Jim Irsay is basically saying, look, either you take what we're giving you or you can sit out. He doesn't care.
And basically what the PUP list thing is basically, like I said, we will do everything in our power to hurt your financial situation that, you'll have no other choice but to play.
And that's what I don't like about the owners, because they can basically say, oh, well, you're not doing what I want. Screw you. That's what they're basically saying. We'll make your wallet hurt. Ours will be fine. We'll print money during the year when we sell tickets, or as Hank would say, selling chicken tender buckets. But basically, what? But my point is, they will sell food and alcohol, and they'll make that money back.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that they're paying, they might not make that money back. So it's basically a big FU.
Is that Jim Irsay contacting you now?
Yeah, that's Jim Irsay saying, stop talking about me. You're embarrassing me. I didn't know how he got. Wait a minute. How did he get my text number? Ugh.
Hey, Nick, is something going on with our video feed? My video feed's starting to act up.
Maybe? I think mine is too.
We interrupt this program. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. Please listen carefully to the following announcement.
It's back.
Broncos country, Broncos country, Broncos country, let's ride. Broncos country, Broncos country, Broncos country, let's ride.
RELAX.
Nick! It's back!
Oh, no.
And we had outside interference from Aaron Rodgers. You had both Jets and Broncos country.
Broncos country, Broncos country, Broncos country, Broncos country, let's ride.
Oi.
So I wanted to wait until our NFL preview to do this, but my situation has been, let's say, compromised because of one certain head coach, and so it is time for the first time in this 2023 NFL season for our first edition of Broncos Country. Let's ride.
Wait a minute. You've been duped! Smeckledorfed! That's not even a word, and I agree with you! Oh.
So what the hell has caused this? Why did I have to bring Broncos Country Let's Ride back early? Why did I have to throw a Jets Country Take Flight in there too? Which, by the way, hold on one second.
Oh, no.
Because Aaron Rodgers was involved in this, now I gotta... Where are you? Okay, there you go. And where are you? There you are.
Oh, God. Great.
Okay, back to the normal colors, back to Broncos Country, let's ride. What is going on around here? Well, here's what's basically happening. Sean Payton, who is now the new head coach of the Denver Broncos, after the horrific disaster of Nathaniel Hackett last season, who is now the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. Well, Sean Payton kind of may have had a case of open mouth insert foot.
You mean diarrhea of the mouth?
And constipation of the brain, yes.
I mean, this story was nuts, because Sean Payton must have forgotten that he's not at Fox Sports anymore and just took a huge shit on top of Nathaniel Hackett and said, bird meets shit hitting ground, and basically said, ha ha, you have a shitty team. You have a horrible team. You're garbage. You don't know how to coach. And then all of a sudden, Sean Payton finally realized, oh, wait, I have to walk that all back. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, so basically, he insinuated, I should have said Sean Payton kind of insinuated that, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if, the Jets basically did all this, and then there was nothing, and basically said that Nathaniel Hackett was a terrible coach, and basically that just because they picked up Aaron Rodgers, there wasn't exactly going to be any, that basically whatever the Jets did wasn't going to matter. And so
And this is great because this is going to be great when the two teams play each other the week that they play.
yeah,
But Hackett said he wasn't surprised by Payton's remarks, claiming his Denver Broncos successor has been blasting him publicly for a year. A year!
and Hackett said he feels like Sean Payton, by doing this while he's the new head coach, kind of broke the coach's code.
I mean, all right, we're going to get into semantics about what's a code and what's not. This is like the unwritten rules in baseball. Oh, well, you're not supposed to hit somebody after a home run. What's next? We're going to football. We're going to say you can't trash a coach if he didn't do well in an organization. Let's be real. Nathaniel Hackett had a horrible time as a head coach of the Broncos.
Yeah. What Sean Payton is saying is not true. I mean, what Sean Payton is saying is true. He said, quote, that Nathaniel Hackett's 2022 in Denver, quote, might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. It was that bad. He's not wrong. He is not wrong. The problem is he has now gone over to an organization like the Jets, who just had a major coup in Aaron Rodgers this past offseason. Now, granted, whether you think Aaron Rodgers is the answer to the Jets' troubles or not is up to you. But here's the difference. Sean Payton, it's been a couple of years since he's been a head coach. And he is taking on an organization that very organization that was one of the worst in football last year. So bad that when they got Russell Wilson, people thought they had won the trade. And now it's pretty clear they lost that trade, and they gave up a first-round pick in the process, 2 first-round picks in the process. So they didn't have a pick this year, and they're not going to have a pick next year, which is going to be really bad for that organization. So Sean Payton has his work cut out for him. Now the Jets, let's be clear about something. Yeah, we can talk about, is Rodgers really the answer or not? Yeah, we can talk about the fact that Nathaniel Hackett is there. But you know what? Last year they had the offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson. Last year they had the defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner. Breece Hall could have been an offensive rookie of the year if he hadn't gotten hurt mid-season. And really, the one thing that held the Jets back, which is why they went out and got Rodgers, was the quarterback. Because Zach Wilson sucked. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. The quarterback sucked. And now you bring in Aaron Rodgers and you bring in Nathaniel Hackett. Now I have my skepticism about this team, especially when you still have a Broncos team, a Bills team that is led by Josh Allen. That's been one of the best in the AFC for the last few years. The Bills have just had the case of the bridesmaid, never the bride. When you have the likes of the Chiefs and Bengals in this same conference, you got the Miami Dolphins, who are an incredible team, who got Tyreek Hill during the last offseason and was great. The only issue you got with the Dolphins is Tua with his concussions. But if Tua can have a healthy year, that team's going to be dangerous.
But the point I want to make.
Sorry, Nick, I was going to say, but the point I was making about this is the Jets, for what their troubles are, the Jets are now going to be in one of the most competitive divisions in football. The AFC,
I think it is the most competitive.
AFC East this year is the AL East in baseball, where it is going to be so competitive. You got all the 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC East are talented. The Pats,
they're talking about the Pats are going to finish 4th for the first time in years. But just to go back to one thing you said, the Bills have a situation going on with Josh. Why am I forgetting the quarterback name? Was it Allen? Thank you. Josh Allen, the quarterback of the Bills, basically coming out and saying the other day that he's not even focused on the Super Bowl. He's focused on just making the playoffs.
Yes,
and then he's fighting with Diggs.
The whole Diggs thing, is another story. But I do understand his perspective of one game at a time, because you got a lot of competition in the AFC.
I worry about him a little bit, though, just because the way he's finished the last couple of seasons, the injuries. I think this is the Jets. I hate to say this. I can't believe it because I've been skeptical this whole time, but the Jets could win this division.
My whole take is that with this whole Sean Payton situation is, what Sean Payton is saying isn't wrong, but to put the blast out there in public, that's up for debate. Plus, Sean, answer me this. What happens if Russell Wilson doesn't get back to form? What happens if the Broncos continue to mount with injuries? What's going to happen when the Broncos finish with a worse record than the Jets? Then these comments are going to be like how everybody blasted Hackett last season. You're going to get.
Well, first of all, he already got blasted for the comments. The other one I want to read also is that there was a comment about 20 dirty hands around quarterback Russell Wilson was another comment that was also said. I don't know. There was a lot of interesting things. Payton said,
you know what's funny? And you know what's funny, Nick? Aaron Rodgers, we talked about how is he going to handle the New York market? Is he going to be in a situation? Guess what? None of this was his fault, and he's actually saying the right things. He didn't throw Payton under the bus as, a bad coach. Gave him respect, and basically said, hey, I have this team. The Jets are my team, and Hackett is my coach. He pulled the Will Smith. He said, keep my coach's name out your mouth.
I mean, so Payton said he, quote, made a mistake, saying he planned to call Hackett and Robert Saleh to apologize. Hackett said he hasn't received an apology from Payton, adding that he doesn't expect Payton to follow through on his promise, as if he believes Payton broke the code of coaching fraternity. That's kind of a ridiculous term, but Hackett said, I do. He said that criticism was very expected. You knew it was going to happen. You knew he was going to handle it that way at some point. That's how it was going all of last year. So the way I look at this is Sean Payton better go out and freaking win games this year after making all those comments. If you go 7-10 or you go 6-11,
and the
you're
Jets,
screwed.
Especially if the Jets finish with the same, if not a better record than you.
Well, let's just be real. With Aaron Rodgers, they're probably going to win at least 9 or 10 games. I think legitimately, I think they'll win 9 to 10 games. So, and that's going to be close to a division win. So
right. There's the thing. If the Jets don't perform and only win 6 or 7, yes, it's a disappointment. But then what happens if Payton and the Broncos finish with the same record, if not less? That's still a really bad look for Payton. And by the way, Mr. Payton, just because you're now the coach of the Broncos and you're a Super Bowl champion, and yes, you're still a great coach. But you know what? I'm going to no. But you know what? I'm going to do this every week. I'm going to give you Broncos country lunchbox. Because until I see any sort of change in this team where they can actually go on, they win a game, they win another game. To take it from Major League, they win another game. That's called a winning streak, fellas. Until they can actually put together consistent positive momentum, the Broncos are still going to be one of the laughing stocks of this league.
Well, yeah, the Broncos, first of all, Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is a declining quarterback. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Nick, you're overreacting. His stats have been horrible the last couple of seasons. And he's thrown more picks. I think he led the league in picks last year.
Something like that. He had the most embarrassing one when he was the Christmas game on Nickelodeon where he throws the pick to his former teammate Bobby Wagner. And you got Patrick Starr of all people saying, that's not what he wanted to cook.
By the way, you do know that they announced they're doing a simulcast for the Super Bowl on Nickelodeon, right?
Yes.
But you know what it is? You know who came to the defense of Hackett? Do you?
RELAX.
I said he said all the right things too.
And I was like, wow. Like Aaron actually handled it professionally for the most part and came to his defense. I'm like, you know what? Sean Payton's got a lot of skeletons in the closet now because there's no way. I don't sit with Patrick, the wide receiver, being out for the second straight year with a torn Achilles, I think. And
you gotta hope that like Cortland Sutton and company end up stepping up.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson has a lot to prove. If he has another down year, the Broncos are in trouble. Like, and a lot of money to be paid. So,
yep. All right, moving on. Talk about the University of Minnesota for just a second. So, yes, as I said, the college sports world is going into hell. Northwestern still has its troubles. I think they got hit with another lawsuit. So that situation's still developing. You got the Iowa State quarterback that's now finding himself in hell and potentially facing jail time for betting on games. And now all that toxic culture has now also stretched over to the University of Minnesota. So this story, for full clarification, actually came out after we recorded last week.
Right after the show last week.
So we weren't able to get it in time. But here's the story from Front Office Sports and CBS Sports. Former Minnesota football players have described the football program led by PJ Fleck as a, quote, cult, alleging the program's culture is, quote, fraught with intimidation and toxicity. Among the allegations are that Fleck interfered with medical protocols by seeking for injured players to return earlier than anticipated, and by, quote, minimizing the seriousness of some pretty horrendous injuries. The story, this is taken from CBS Sports, the story also details a system devised by Fleck called the Fleck Bank, quote, the Fleck Bank.
I heard about this.
Rack up goodwill to circumvent the repercussions of failed drug tests and other violations. Minnesota Athletic Director Mark Hoyle voiced his support for Fleck's program in a statement. In 2018, CBS Sports obtained a memorandum in which a former employee warned the Minnesota Board of Regents of a toxic culture within the program. This person said, if, quote, issues continue to go unaddressed and things do not change, the health and welfare of student athletes at the University of Minnesota are in jeopardy. What is going on in college sports?
Well, I would say mostly college football, but yes, college sports. But what the is going on here in college football? Now, I found a story on ESPN from a couple of days ago from Adam Rittenberg, who's been really on top of these. That guy should get a raise for the amount of investigations he's been doing and uncovering. But Fleck came out and told ESPN that the claims from the report from Front Office Sports, quote, have been looked into multiple times since 2017 with no wrongdoing. That's not the point. That's not the point. If it has to be investigated since 2017, there has to be a problem going on. There has to be.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right. And if they're saying there's a Fleck bank, and apparently I heard there was Fleck coin, so now everyone has a coin.
We just need bench coin.
We just need bench coin. Except we're not going to force people to do workouts and demand stuff.
I think so, just the idea of bringing. Now, let's be clear. We have seen in college sports and professional sports players pressured to come back from injuries quicker rather than later.
Mostly professional sports, but yes.
Right. But I'm saying, here's the thing about it. Those are pros. These are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. Like, if some of these injuries, if they don't heal properly and they get re-hurt, those are going to be devastating effects they may have to live with for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years, however long they live.
Well, the other thing you have to realize is now with college athletes getting paid and all that stuff going through, you now have other issues because now you're affecting people's wallets on top of it, when this was never a thing 10, 15 years ago, when you were just there to get either a degree or just go to the professional sports. Yeah. Now you have these issues.
I mean, there are probably certain programs. I can't say for certain, but there probably are certain programs where 10, 15 years ago, they were still dealing with come back from injury sooner rather than later like that.
No, but I'm saying is with these guys being paid, that's why they're getting pressured to come back sooner, because these college athletes are being paid to do the stuff. So I don't know. And apparently there were 6 channels set up to report mistreatment, including directly to athletic director Mark Coyle, who told Front Office Sports that he had never heard such claims. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
But now you got CBS Sports saying there was
this was ESPN too.
That in 2018 there was somebody who filed a complaint.
It says Fleck noted that Minnesota's athletic department followed the football program's lead in not permitting physical exercise to be used as punishment. All right, are we really going to lie? Is that what we're going to do right now? You're going to lie and say physical punishment is not used?
Where is it?
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop you fucking lying.
That is the biggest joke I've ever heard in my life.
You're telling me you haven't been on a team where basically, at the end of a bad practice, like a really bad, that you were not forced to run?
You weren't forced to do sprints, or what do they call them? Suicides?
Yeah.
Even though that's a horrible choice of words. But my point is that
Well, I think there's a new term for it, but I just know them as suicides. The one where you run. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
on basketball court. You run to the court, quarter of the court and back.
Each line. Yeah. So that's ridiculous to say that the school that they followed the protocols and said that they never use exercise as a punishment. Come on, you're gonna lie to us like this? I don't know. I'm sure we're gonna hear more about this, and we'll break it down over the coming weeks. But I think Fleck's in trouble.
All right, MLB trade deadline time. So that was fun the other day when I had to be on social media trying to break down all the trades. All you and Ben and Hank and John and Anthony all trying to figure out.
It's funny. I said to the guys, you probably heard me say it on the street. I don't need normal sources anymore. I'm just going to go to Twitter and follow Jeff Passan and John Heyman and Bob Nightingale, and they'll give me my news.
And here's the thing. There was a lot of activity yesterday, which great for us, great for fun with content and the stream and everything. I just wonder if some of these trades were done just to make moves, and if some of these trades are just going to come back to bite certain teams in the ass.
Some it might. Some teams, I was surprised that some teams, I was telling you before we started, like the Reds needed a pitcher. They didn't do it. The Giants made a small move, but they really needed another pitcher, another bat. And then you have some teams like the Rangers who cleaned up during the deadline, and the Astros who really cleaned up.
Right. Now, granted, with the Rangers, maybe Scherzer is a little bit of a risk because they basically, with their negotiations between them and the Mets, they said, we're only going to do this trade if Scherzer opts into his player option right now, and we have him under control for another year. Now, granted, there is risk to that because Scherzer probably is going to need an IL stint. They just put, Nick, another familiar face here in New York, Nathan Eovaldi, just got put on the IL. But you know what? And I get that. And, somebody I know actually ragged on me a little bit for that about, the optimism. But you know what? The Rangers still have one of the best rotations in baseball. And they
do.
And they are going to be hella competitive. It's them and the Astros battling for the AL West. Technically, the Mariners are like 17-9 in their last 20-something, 17-8 or 9 or something like that in the last 25, 26 games. And yet they seem to be sellers at this deadline.
Yeah, that was kind of confusing. First of all, Seattle's been a little bit disappointing when we all thought they were going to compete.
But they're just getting on a run. So this should be the time you would think maybe you either stand pat or buy in their case. You don't
But
sell.
who are you buying, though? Because the prices are... That's the other problem during this deadline.
Stand put or buy.
No, right. No, I agree with you. But I'm saying the prices were so high during this deadline that teams were just like, F you, I don't need this. And it was just like, I'm just going to stand pat.
Mm-hmm. And then you had certain players basically taken off the market. Obviously a thing that kind of damaged this trade deadline, Shohei Ohtani got taken off the market. There was no word about Padres and Juan Soto, so Juan Soto ends up staying.
I was kind of surprised that they didn't at least try to make a deal, knowing that he had the year left. They could have gotten the most maximum value out of that deal.
I mean, I'm surprised. I'm just surprised they actually bought a couple of pieces. You would think the likes of Hader and Soto they would have traded away. And,
they got Choi and what's his name from Pittsburgh also.
Right. Well, I was saying, but they said, I remember the initial reports where Soto could have been traded. Bader was definitely available. And then who's the guy they got? Blake Snell also could have been available.
That, in my opinion, was the biggest mistake they made at the deadline, not trading Snell and at least getting a few pieces that could have helped them back in return.
Yeah, especially when the division at this point for the NL West is a 2-team race between the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers.
By the way, that's another team that people are not talking about enough. The Diamondbacks, who were supposed to be a third-place team at best, they've come out of nowhere. And they made the move and got Tommy Pham from the Mets, which, by the way,
they were buyers at this deadline.
Their outfield depth was good to begin with, but they made some pretty good moves. I mean,
and Corbin Carroll's going to be the rookie of the year by far in the National League.
Oh, by far he's going to be the rookie of the year. I mean, but Arizona did really good at the deadline. I mean, like they made some decent moves. They brought in a few guys here and there. They might win the division.
They could. And that means the Dodgers, I mean, are going to have to settle for a wild card. But you know what? That means more trouble for the NL West, for not just the NL West, but all the National League teams. When you got the Dodgers and the Giants competing for a wild card, and the NL East, I mean, the NL East, obviously the Braves are going to be the runaway favorites, but you got the Marlins and the Phillies also in that wild card hunt. I would have also said the Mets, but well, unfortunately, it seems like the Mets have just decided. Where is it? Hold on. Okay, here it is.
They bankrupt themselves.
Bye Scherzer. Bye Fam.
They also traded the catching I think, was it Leone?
Leone, yeah.
They traded everybody. They basically said, Steve Coe basically said, money gone. He just said, I can make it go away.
And here's the thing. I understand what they're trying to do because they want to rebuild their farm system. I forget which Texas team. It was either the Astros or the Rangers. But one of the prospects that they got, like who was like in the tens in the
Rangers
in the system, is
Yeah,
like
Rangers.
in the top 5 of the Mets system, which goes to show you the lack of quality.
Wait, are you talking about Acuna's brother?
Is it Acuna? I don't know if it was Acuna.
They got Acuna's brother in the trade with the Rangers. That was the top prospect.
It might have been Acuna. That he wasn't a top 5 in his organization's farm system, but he's the top in the Mets, which goes to show you the kind of need that the Mets have with their farm system. However, what baffles me was Epler's comments to Max Scherzer, where according to Scherzer, basically Epler told them, we're not even going to look at 2024. We're going to look at 25 and 26.
Yeah, so I have the direct quote. He said, I talked to Billy. I was like, okay, are we reloading essentially? And he said, no, we're not. Basically, we're looking at 25, 26, 25 at the earliest, more like 26. They're talking about throwing 2 years away.
And here's my only issue with that, where they're talking about throwing 2 years away. You have an owner that was willing to spend like crazy these last couple of seasons. Last year, Nick, for as much, because I heard you and Anthony argue, for as much as the Mets ultimately collapsed in September and didn't get the job done, 101 wins, only the fourth time in franchise history, they got to triple digits. All of a sudden now, we give up after one bad season. We give up. Here you go. All these guys over. You would think for somebody with the kind of money that Steve Cohen has and the kind of money he's not afraid to throw around, you would think Steve Cohen would just, okay, he makes these trades. But that doesn't mean that in the offseason, when all these free agents are around, he just won't throw the money again. And it would be like what people expect of the Yankees, where they compete every year.
Right. I mean, the thing I was arguing with Anthony was on the stream we did was that how can you tell me you're making an excuse for the Mets? All right, they won 101 games last year, and now you're trying to make excuses. Oh, well, they won 100. That's last year. And by the way, that was a disappointment because they didn't win.
Well, they
didn't win.
It was a disappointment because they lost the division and then they lost to the Padres in the.
That's my point. 100 wins it means nothing if you don't make it to the promised land and win.
Hey, Yankees 99 wins. Got their asses swept by the Astros in the ALCS.
It's basically a lost season in my book, that 99 win season, because they didn't go anywhere. So looking at these quotes, and basically he was asking, are we going to make a run for a World Series? And Epler said, no, we're not even going to sign the upper echelon guys.
And that's the thing that baffles me is that, like, I get rebuilding your farm system. I get selling off when a season is lost. But the kind of return you got, especially for all the money that you threw around, willing to pay for people into next year, like Scherzer, and you're only going to get a few prospects there. And,
well,
and
yeah, I was just going to say the number I was going to throw out there was $54 million for Justin Verlander in the trade to Houston
because they wanted to vest his option.
But think about that, though. Cohen has to fork over $54 million to the Astros.
But that's my point in saying, why are you saying you're going to punt on 24 too? Because you could just basically go buy the free agents with all the money you have.
You know why they're punting? Because even though Cohen has all that money, he still has to pay all that money that's left over from all these contracts. So I guess he's trying to get the money off the books, and that's why Epler was saying, hey, we're punting on at least 24 because we don't have the room, so to speak.
It sounds kind of hypocritical to do that.
Of course it's hypocritical.
After the last couple of years throwing all this money around.
So Cohen went from, I just broke a record spending $800 million to I'm a cheap piece of shit.
To the point where we have to do the Cohen tax, which, by the way, I'm just going to throw this up here. You got to pay the tax, man.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. You came out and said, I'm going to spend whatever means necessary. I'm going to make my own Cohen tax. That's how much he was paying. And now it's like, oh, sorry, we're done. Verlander, you go here. Scherzer, you go here. Tommy Pham, you go here.
And by the way, for all that we're talking bad about the Verlander trade, the Astros are also big winners here. Because now they got, I mean, for the month that Verlander missed for the season, he has still been pretty lights out on the mound. And he gets reunited with his catcher that he had and the team where he won a World Series. You know, for them, grabbing Verlander was absolutely fantastic. And this might be a little bit of quite the take, but the Astros just put himself back in yet another ALCS, if not yet another World Series.
I don't think he ever wanted to leave Houston. He just took the money to go to the Mets. That's why he was so desperate to go back.
I liked Anthony's point. He got offered all that money. He got offered the chance to be on a winning team with a guy who was a good friend of his, where they fell just short of a World Series in Detroit.
He wanted another chance, wanted redemption.
Right. And you know what's funny? He still has that chance with where he went. Now, maybe that's because of the no trade clause, which he ended up twisting the Mets' arm to do a little bit, but he got that point. And by the way, speaking of no trade clauses, Eduardo Rodriguez. That is a lose situation. The Dodgers lost, the Tigers lost, and Erod lost.
You know what? Eduardo Rodriguez is a jerk, because why would the fuck would you stay in Detroit, where Detroit is an endless dump going nowhere? The Tigers are going nowhere. And I know John Check, John Check, who co-hosts our Hitting for the Cycle show, is a Tiger fan and would say, like, he even said the team was a dump. They traded Michael Lorenzen to Philly. And by the way, you got nothing because Dave Dombrowski is the general manager of Philly. And what does Dombrowski care about most? Veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you really think? John told me during the stream that they didn't even get a top 100 guy back for Lorenzen. Or top 60 guy, whatever he said. Doesn't matter. That's low for a guy like Lorenzen.
And I get that maybe supposedly he didn't want to, put all the undue pressure on his family to move and such. But when you are a guy who, let's face it, this Detroit run hasn't gone good. I think it was last year where Erod had personal issues. They never clarified exactly what it was.
You see John get mad during the stream about the personal issues with Erod. And he also said he's going to opt out. He's going to opt out with the 2 months left. He's just going to opt out and leave anyway.
But what baffles me in that scenario is you have that, even if you do opt out, you have a chance to go to the Dodgers, where, like we said, and actually I need to correct myself in the standings because the Diamondbacks technically are third. The Giants have lead them. So you got a 3-team race with the Dodgers, Giants, and Diamondbacks. The Dodgers are definitely going to be a playoff team. You can provide and have a chance to make a run this year on have a chance to go win a pennant or go win a series. And you're going to say, no, I would rather spend my time on this absolute dump in Detroit.
That's what I said. Yeah, it's awful. I mean, Erod, who's pitched for Boston before, who's pitched, I think, for a few teams, and he goes to Detroit. He wants his money. He's going to opt out anyway. Just go to L.A. They'll pay you. They're definitely going to pay you if you pitch well. One last thing I want to make sure we get to as well, because we have another story to get to as well, is the Yankees. Because the Yankees deserve, as Mr. Crocker would say, F.
Hold on.
F. I mean, what the hell, Brian Cashman? Like, what are you doing? And if you saw, like, I put up a clip of Brian Cashman on our network account where Brian Cashman basically said, oh, we're just going to stand pat. We called this on the stream. That he was basically going to say, oh, we're going to stand pat. We couldn't make any moves, blah, blah, blah. We're good.
He pulled the Mara. We can win and rebuild at the same time. Here's my whole issues with the Yankees. First of all, I feel like this is such a lost season. I get you're only 3.5 out of the division, but now the Rays are kicking your ass this series. Now that Verlander is going to be pitching in the Astros series, and of all games on Friday against Luis Severino, who somehow got another chance and wasn't DFA'd after his horrendous pitching performance against the Orioles.
And Domingo Germán somehow magically appearing.
Right. Well, again, I suspect a trade fell through. That's the only logic.
Okay, but it looks weird the way they said he had an armpit injury and then he somehow showed up.
Yes. And I think ultimately, Nick, that's the baffling part. And I've said this to multiple people. It's not a matter of the Yankees stinking, because you know what? It sucks as a Yankee fan, and I am mad about it, and I have the part of me that's tired, that's raging. But you know what? We haven't had our experience yet that like our parents had of the 80s to 90s Yankees that was just utter trash.
And the thing is, and I'll say this quickly, that we are fine with a rebuild. You and I think said we'd be okay with it.
Yes, but be honest about it. Like, and I think that's the frustration of this year. The fucking coddling after an 18 strikeout game. Oh, but our bats looked okay. Boone sucks as a manager. And this is, if they finish last in the AL, if they finish with an under 500 record, he has to go.
Cashman's got to go. Cashman's going to go end up be the hobo on the street.
But Cashman, he's not going to, though, which maybe speaks volumes to the kind of ownership that is there. But, I mean, Harold Reynolds and I think it was Tom Verducci argued about this on the MLB Network. Is the thing actually that you said, Nick? Would fans be willing to accept a rebuild? Because I think it was Verducci, if not, it was one of the other insiders who said this. I think as fans, we're tired of the bull crap that has happened this season.
We're tired of the in-between.
Yeah, and we would be willing to undergo a rebuild. But Harold Reynolds pulled the thing out. It's the Yankees. It's the pride power pinstripe. Fans would not be willing to stop. They don't rebuild.
That's ridiculous. And we have one more story to get to, and we can always talk about this more. But my point is that this is garbage. Enough with the chicken tender buckets and selling food and alcohol. Go rebuild this team so that fans will actually come back and watch the product.
And I get it. You know what? And I get it. We're stuck with this contract with freaking Giancarlo Stanton and Rizzo.
You're going to have to eat that.
And the player, no, but my point is, the players haven't helped themselves. IKF admitted as such. And I will be real and say, the likes of Volpe and Peraza and Carrera, they have stunk. But the likes of them, the likes of Judge being injured, so it doesn't resolve the issues of the other players. And when you have all those open spots next year, where there's like 7, 8, 9, 10 roster spots you have to fill in the offseason, you can't just, and you're going to have $60 million coming off the books with Donaldson and IKF gone and the two catchers gone. You can't just say, well, because we gave Judge the contract last season, we're just going to do a few million here, a few million here.
I can't even get into it because we don't have time. I said to Hank on the stream.
Okay, one last point I'm going to make. You had 10 teams calling for you for Gleyber Torres, and the Marlins offering 2 pitching prospects. And you're going to
2 high-level prospects, apparently, also.
What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You had teams calling on you for Bader. What are you doing? Actually,
and one last thing I'll say, there were reports out there that teams were calling for Clay Holmes.
And if it's going to get to the point where, like LaGreca said a couple days ago here locally on the K Show, where because of some, like Stanton and such, you may have to convert Judge to a first baseman role, you're going to need outfield help very badly, very soon.
Who was the one name they were saying? The Colorado guy or the St. Louis guy? Gehrig?
Gehrig. There was the O'Neill, I think, in St. Louis. Which, by the way, also the other thing about the Yankees, they should have made trade. If they were going to act the way that they were act as cautious buyers, they should have done something 3 weeks ago when Bellinger was available in the market.
Oh, please. The Yankees were never going to go spend money on anything. It is it is.
Story here about Damian Lillard, moving on to the basketball world. Apparently the NBA, hold on a minute. What? Am I reading this? Hold on. Sound the alarm. They are actually taking a stand and saying to Dame, stop with the comments about wanting to play with the Heat.
Yeah, so this report came out. Paul and I kind of detailed it a little bit on 3&D last week that essentially the NBA has told Damian Lillard and his agent, cut the shit and stop with all this nonsense of you're just going to play for Miami Heat. Your agent's threatening other teams, saying that it's career suicide or that you bring him in. First of all, he's actually tampering against himself because he's under contract with the Trailblazers.
Wait, NBA doing something about tampering? Really?
Yeah. So Lillard is actually
concept in my mind.
Yeah, so technically Damian Lillard is tampering against his own contract, which I didn't know that was actually a thing, but
actually, Nick, hold on one second, because obviously this comes out on Thursday, but as we're recording here, a little story just showed up within the time we're recording this from Aaron Fentress, who says, I'm told that if he ends up back in camp, he would show up and play. He's gonna get his money. This is Fentress regarding Lillard if he does not get traded before the start of camp. He suspects that even if a trade between the Heat, who, by the way, is the only team reportedly yesterday, they mentioned yesterday while we were doing all the trade deadline coverage, the Heat are the only ones that are actually serious about a Dame trade. That Fentress is saying if a trade can't get done between the Trailblazers and Heat in this offseason, he still thinks Lillard will show up and play.
He's going to end up with the Heat. Either he's going to end up with the Heat or he's not going to play. I mean, but that's a lot of money to put along. Like, he's supposedly like $60 million a year with the Trailblazers. I mean, trust me, he's made millions upon millions of dollars. Is he really going to sit? He could afford to sit out. He could be Kyrie Irving and just sit out. I mean, but
is that smart?
No, it's not smart, but he's made enough money where if he just said F you to the Trailblazers, I don't want to be here. But Miami's the only team. They've scared everybody away from any trade value. So it's right. Miami. Did I say it again? Miami is the only team around to make a trade at this point.
If it wasn't for copyright issues, I would say let's play the Will Smith song. Welcome to Miami.
or let's get Miami Vice. I mean, like, my point is that it's
or let's get Pitbull in here, Mr. 305.
Yeah, we could do that too. I mean, but my point is that Damian Lillard is a jerk. His agent is a jerk. I think they should send Damian Lillard off to the Alaskan Basketball League at this point and let him play there. I mean, because let him go eat the blubber nuggets and say, ooh, chewy. I mean, like, I'm so tired of this Damian Lillard nonsense. It's pissing me off. You know what? Send Damian Lillard to the New York Knicks and let him deal with James Dolan.
Damian, come over here.
You know what? If I'm the Portland Trailblazers and Joe Cronin, I think is the GM over there, I would say, Dame, F you, I'm not trading you. That's what I would say right now.
You know where they could make the trade?
Guangdong Tigers. Ni hao! Ni hao! Ni hao!
Thanks, Jack.
That's a good point. But you know what? This is all a taste of medicine finally by Adam Silver saying, hey, I have to do my job.
Oh, hold on one second.
It's not an Adam Silver slip up for a change.
Oh, hang on one second.
Hold on.
It's not.
No. It's not an Adam Silver slip up. He's doing his job for a change. Hallelujah. The NBA can be run by someone who's smart.
Oh my God.
All right. One last story I want to briefly get into.
Quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Very sad that this is happening. Mark Jackson being so originally the story was that Mark Jackson was going to get demoted. Doris Burke was going to get promoted, and Doc Rivers was signed. And basically,
that part happened. She got promoted, and he got hired. And Mark Jackson was told, "You can do the games with oh God, I forgot this guy on the second team. He does the Kings games,
the B team.
What? Yeah, yeah. And eventually, he just said, "I'm not doing that," and then they just let him go.
So, in one swift move, Mark Jackson and Van Gundy are both gone out of ESPN. Now, listen, I love Doris Burke. I'm so happy for her to have this opportunity. I didn't want it to be this way. I didn't want it.
You mean with all the cuts?
Yes.
I mean, I saw a quote from Marsh. I'm trying to find it quick. Oh, here it is. Andrew Marchand spoke to Mike Green. He was stunned and sad about the firings of his longtime partners, Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. By the way, I don't think Mike Green would do it, but if I'm Mike Green right now, I'd say, F you, I'm out of here. I would.
Well, Nick, this goes to what I told you, and we talked about with AJ Perez. What was my term? Content over commentators. As long as they have the
It's
NBA.
stupid. And you know what? And you brought it up because you heard it from LaGreca on the K show here locally in New York. I made this point to you for years that Van Gundy supposedly was getting in trouble with the NBA. Now, it shouldn't matter. ESPN pays the NBA for contract rights. So it needs to be a 50-50 game between what's allowed and what's not allowed.
And Rosenberg, actually on that K show, put out an interesting thing. He said the only reason he doesn't think this is because of the River signing. But if it was just Dorsberg got promoted and Mark Jackson was let go, Rosenberg put out there of like, would ESPN, at least partially, if not fully, let the NBA walk to NBC when the TV rights are up?
Hell no, they wouldn't. The NBA is one of their biggest products. No offense, like I said to you in our preview meetings, like MLB to UFC, because UFC has gotten up there to be very popular for them. Right. But the NBA is their bread and butter. They essentially own the NBA Finals rights for ABC and ESPN.
And NBC Sports has basically nothing after they lost the NHL to ESPN and to Turner. So what basically, I mean, they have Sunday Night Football. They have Sunday Night Football. They have the Super Bowl every 4 years. They have the Olympics. But why would you give them a bigger, why would you bring them really back into the game if you let them go to NBC?
Well, and actually, NBC is going to lose part of that rotation because ESPN and ABC is going to have the Super Bowl in the next couple of years.
That's why I said every 4 years, not 3.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, now ESPN's going to be more involved. So maybe I think they want the Super Bowl and they want the NBA Finals. That's where I think they want to stand.
I think the NBC will get something, but it might only be like a game or two a week. Like a Sunday. I'm just putting out there like a Sunday.
They were talking about a Sunday package before Sunday Night Football, but that's a mistake because everyone's going to be watching football coverage all Sunday.
Well, but the only time they would have to worry about it really is, during the regular season, yeah. But I was just throwing Sunday out there as just like a possibility. It could be like a Monday and a Thursday and a Wednesday game of the week or something like that.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. But unfortunately,
I only say that not on ESPN's part, but that is the NBA going to want to expand its portfolio and have it on so many channels?
And unfortunately, as we come down to the end here, digital is the platform. So Amazon, Apple.
Well, you say that. There was a story the other day. ESPN is getting ready that maybe 25 or 26, they'll take their channels off of the television service and go all digital.
Which I wouldn't be surprised because they're looking to reach younger people with cell phones. So that's where they're trying to go with it. So am I surprised to hear that? No. Do I think it's going to happen? That's a whole nother thing. It's a difference between saying and doing. Look at what they're doing with soccer, with the MLS. And look what happened with Messi. Now that's paying off with the Apple exclusive. Right. So I'm mad to see Mark Jackson go. He was getting a little annoying, though, on the telecasts at times. But him, Van Gundy, and Breen, best trio in all of calling NBA Finals games and playoff games, my opinion. Don't get me wrong. I love TNT. I love Harlan, who's probably my favorite over there. And also Ian Eagle when he calls TNT games. But that trio with Breen and Van Gundy and Jackson will never be beat.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. One more time, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the network. 470 subscribers and counting. Get us to 500, then we can begin that long climb all the way to 1,000. So thank you everybody who has supported. We hope you continue to support. So continue to subscribe here at youtube.com/ETB Network. Make sure to follow us across social media. At ETB Sports and at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure to follow us too across social media at Thomas J. Albano and at Morgasen Radio. And don't forget to go to etbpodcast.com for more information on the network, blogs from some of our hosts, Make sure to check us out on audio-only platforms such as Acast. If you are listening on those audio-only platforms, make sure to check out our home feed on YouTube and hit the subscribe to help us even further. And yeah, I think that's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. We are on the path now to 200 episodes, believe it or not.
Holy cow. Wow. We're going to have to do something big for that.
Yeah, I was going to say our fourth episode 197 or 198 is going to be the show's fourth birthday, so which is actually really cool.
Wow. All right. I guess we have a lot to look forward to then.
Yep. So for Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. See you next time here on Empty the Bench. Take care, all.
See you guys next week.